Well, Rowena, welcome to the Thundercast.
Thank you.
I know at this moment people do really big fancy introductions about the Thundercast, but it's become an on-running joke that I'm really terrible at that, so I just don't do it. I like to just get straight to things.
I love it. But branding, and that's it. Thunder.
That's it. Showing my professionalism, my phone rang straight away. There you go, brilliant. Your book, this one here, Uncomfortable Growth.
Mm-hmm.
I really mean this, and so I hope my words feel the truth, because they are. I found it really approachable and really easy, and I mean this as a compliment. I pick up a lot of books. I mean, what are we, November?
Mm-hmm.
So I must have read 40 or 50 books this year, I reckon.
Oh, wow. You're an avid reader.
I like to read. I did 22 in 3 months at the beginning of the year. I don't know why, I just did. But this one I found, I've struggled to pick up personal growth books or business books recently for some reason. But yours I picked up at a moment of need, and then I picked it up again recently for some things that are going on in my business. And I really mean this, like, thank you for the book. And I don't know, I love it already, right? And you and I don't even know each other, but I wanted to lead off with that and say it makes a difference. So thank you.
Thank you. Well, no, that means a lot to me, because I mean, that was the reason I wrote it.
Yeah.
I felt like I had learnt a lot, but I actually wanted to put it into a book that people could use very simply, because one of the frustrations I have is you've got lots of smart people, in the world that we work, but everyone's very time poor.
Mm-hmm.
And, I've done a lot of, reading myself, particularly around psychology, around neuroscience. And sometimes I feel like I need a PhD just to understand it. And it goes so deep and narrow. And that's brilliant for the people who just want to be focused on one thing. But it's not necessarily that helpful to get kind of all the pieces that you can understand and action for the majority of people who need it applied to their life.
Mm-hmm.
And so I purposely wrote it to be kind of like end to end for people who don't have time for a PhD in 20 subjects.
Yeah, that actually comes through. I mean, there's I don't know how many visuals there are, but there's at least 8, because I know I took notes on at least 8 of them.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that really lands. It's an interesting observation. It's really the frameworks are really usable. And I came out of it. I told you I reread it again recently. I was like, I really need to revisit that, like the frameworks, because maybe that's what it is. Maybe that's exactly what it is. I'm busy. My mind is full. I mean, I think I'm smart enough, but one of the books I'm reading in parallel is McCaskill's and What We Owe the Future.
Mm-hmm.
And I can only it's like an episode of Black Mirror. I can only watch one before I'm done, and some of the work out there is like that. And so yours was easy in that way. One of the things I was wanted to ask you about, like, since I'm just thinking about which way to start with this, like, now you've written 2 books, 2
books, yeah.
2 books. Do you feel relieved? Are you done?
No, I'm getting started. So I think, my first book was literally a compilation of blog posts. And I just started to write some blogs because I wanted to be able to put my own thoughts out there. And I was just really playing with it. But a couple of people said to me, this is so good. I'd love to be able to give this to my team. And they said, you should put it in a book. And I went, oh, maybe I should. So my first book was literally not meant to be a book. It was just a series of blog posts that I'd written over, I don't know, a year or so. And when I looked at how many I'd written, it's like, oh, there's 75 here. And so it went from concept of a book to a book within 4 weeks.
There you go.
And that was great, because I learned also about how do you go from concept to actually having a physical book to give to people. So I learned about the publishing process. But Uncomfortable Growth was always the book I wanted to write. And so, that had a very different process. That was much more intentional. But I probably now have the book bug, and I'm actually planning to write my next book over the next few months.
What's it going to be on?
Okay, so it's called Wonderosity.
Huh.
And it's the combination of wonder, curiosity, and generosity. And it's I'm still playing with exactly how I'm going to write it, but I'm thinking it's going to be more short passages, but around little nuances and insights. I want it to be used for people who want to develop wonderosity in them because of the benefits of not only positive mental health, but just that ability to be in awe.
I really love that. That's such an interesting theme because it's appearing on so many of the mainstream podcasts, to be in awe, to be in reverence. And I haven't picked anything up I haven't picked up a book on it yet. So maybe yours can be the first one I read. You reminded me, actually, I picked up Ryan Halliday's 365 Meditations for Dads, which is a daily, it's an interesting spin. It's a daily Stoic principle. And I read that with the children every morning. And I know that sounds strange, but because I think that for me, it's like the replacement of rituals. All our rituals are gone. There's chaos, and rites of passage are gone, and children being in awe is gone because they can access everything at the touch of a button. And so we were reading Stoic principles that are 3,000 years old, give or take. Maybe it wasn't called Stoicism then, but Ryan Halliday's got this book. And so I know that I'd be very interested to see what style you turn Wonderosity into and what the consumable content style is, because you've got it really right in Uncomfortable Growth. It'd be interesting to. You said I don't want you to do spoilers, but are you thinking like a regular consumption or because you do storytelling quite well? It's very personal. Is that you thinking that way again?
So what I'm thinking, have you read the book Turning Pro by Stephen Pressfield?
I have not.
Okay, you have to read
Turning Pro by
Stephen Pressfield. It's one of my favorite books ever. From a kind of motivational, somewhere between work and life type of genre. But he's written it as kind of different thoughts that are captured, and they're very simple but very poignant.
Got it.
So rather than being like a chapter which goes for 3,000 words, he might have 15 different thoughts, but they start to create headings, and they take you through. And the reason why I'm thinking of a style like that for Wonderosity is because it's more of a sense of being. Rather than, so I find, reading's very interesting, but the written word can do so many things. And I think when it's written in a book, as Uncomfortable Growth was, with regular chapters, it tends to go very left brain in terms of how we think about it. But when we read poetry, or when we read, kind of content that's more prose or more kind of captures an essence or a feeling, we digest it differently. And Wonderosity is more about being and a mindset. It's not hard work, it's not effort. It's really tapping into that part of us that is light and playful, and moments of feelings that can shape us in different ways. So I'm thinking about a style that helps that to come out.
I'm no author, but I do like the way that you're thinking. The consumability of something is really important because there's so much content. And I know you and I talked about this earlier on today, and I wonder if this is the right segment for it. I'm really interested in that exploration of deeper meaning and like I don't just mean motherhood statements, because the words are easy to find, but the intent behind them is more difficult. And so I like what you're saying. I mean, not that you need my validation, but it's already making me feel about, getting in the right zone, in the right space, and the lessons, or whatever the right words are more embedded. So it'll be interesting to take a look at that when it's ready. So Wonderosity, you're starting next year, so it'll be finished May?
Oh no, it'll be finished hopefully sooner than that. I'm going to start it next week, because I'm off to Scotland on holidays from Saturday.
Right.
And I like to kind of write when I'm away from work.
Yeah.
So because you're in a different headspace. And so I'm just going to I'm going to see how my energy is, but my intent is to get up around 7 a.m. and just write for an hour and a half before, the rest of the family gets up, and we start our day. So I'm just going to see how that goes and just play with it. Because if you're writing about wonderosity, you have to be in that space of wonderosity.
Oh, when you're in the Glens or the islands or wherever you're going to go, you're going to have plenty of opportunities for awe, I would imagine.
Exactly.
I might come back to the book that I'd read and reread recently, because it does make me think about the connection to wonderosity. Like, since you've written the book, and I wouldn't mind getting to some of the key themes in a second, but since you've written the book, what's the thing that you've learned that isn't in the book? Because if people read it and they've given you feedback, or there's a thing that you say, I wish that was in there because it's a concept. Like, what is there anything that's come to mind for you, or do you think the book captures the essence there?
So there is one thing I've put into the training program which isn't in the book, because it came to me after the book, and it's so simple. But think of it, I talk about how each person has a small self and a best self. And the thing we forget is that we move between these all the time. Often externally, we like to share our best self, but the reality is our small self, which are all those things that make us feel small. So whether it's related to fear or shame or imposter syndrome or anger, frustration, we've all got that small self. But when you start to recognize that there's two sides of you, and that we're actually wired more for our small self, right? Because our fear wiring is stronger than our growth wiring, then you start to see how you get triggered, but you also start to recognize ways that you can bring yourself back. And I'm a really big believer, and I think this does come through the book, I believe, about you have to know yourself to grow yourself. And the better you can know yourself, the better you can grow yourself. And it is about hacking yourself. Everyone's different. We've got different genetics. We've got different experiences. So we've got different triggers. We're all unique. But if we can just be really aware and start to see the relationship, then we're going to become a lot more effective at how do we live in our best self more often.
It's actually amazing that we make it as a species at all, isn't it? with the hard wiring for terror. I mean, I don't mind. And again, you can ask me anything back the other way. I'm very open about these things. I find personally and I like the analogy small self, big self. People assume often that I'm a very extrovert, bold, brash character. Early on in my career, incorrectly, I was assessed as vacuous because of the energy that my character brings, but my persona is something else. And I know it's a daily battle. Even doing these, people think, oh, it's so easy for you, but actually it's a battle for me. And the classic is I read the book, I read it again, I call the people in the morning, I tell them what I'm going to say, I have 16,000 pages of notes, like to be ready, all those things. And I find myself at war with my small self every single day. Like, really, I don't mean like in a motherhood way. I do find my ego kicks in though, and when people say, "Oh, it's easy for you," I'm like, if you only saw how difficult.
Because there's need to get this right, like.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, but weirdly, I'm not a perfectionist. I'm not on the OCD spectrum. I'm not actually neurotic at all. I'm very low in neuroticism and very highly open to experience. But there's but again, it comes back, and it comes back to one of the themes in your book that I observe of just myself. With age comes wisdom and the ability to see nuances in experiences, and the book makes the assessment that brings richness. But as I wrote my counterpart, I wrote, yeah, but it also makes me see how things can play out. And I said to you this morning, and I really mean this, it's also making me exceptionally impatient with people who insist on being foolish. Like it's super challenging. So there's a lot in there. But so you've got the small self, big self concept. That's the thing you thought about afterwards. You've got that in your coaching, in your programs you run, the training in our program. If there was a single concept that's actually in the book that you would say to me, and I hadn't read it, for example, you say you have to just take this on. What would that first thing be that's like the gateway concept that gets people, do you think? Which one would you point to?
I think the one that gets people is what is uncomfortable growth? Because I say the words and people go, oh, because growth is often this thing that we say all the time, and it always has so much positivity associated, right, with sales growth and people growth in corporate and business growth and economic growth, but growth is actually really hard. And that's where the idea of uncomfortable growth came from. We don't recognize it's hard. And so the concept behind uncomfortable growth at a personal level is it's the tension between I really want to, but can I? It's that tension. It's like I want to not be stuck. I want to have balance in my life. I want to, there's lots of things that we often think, oh, I want that. But then we think, oh, but can I? And that's really what we're playing with. And I absolutely believe people can. But you have to, like anything, to be able to get better at something, you have to do the work. Now, I think part of the challenge in society, and you alluded to it with everything's on demand, right? Get anything instantly, is that we don't think to do the deep work on ourselves all the time. People want something fast, and no one can do the work on you but you.
Yeah. That's annoying.
But it's true. And also it's your greatest life's work. Your greatest life's work is you. Right? So, I think we just forget that, and we get so caught up in lots of other stuff, and it's all very valid, right? We need to make a living, we need to look after families, but if you don't spend the time on you, you don't have all this stuff to give. And uncomfortable growth is about how you do the work on you. But it's going to take you to amazing new places. And, we are wired for growth. We love that feeling when we're growing and becoming more. But you have to do the work.
So the concept of uncomfortable growth, that tension between I want to and can I think they were the words. I want to and can I.
Perfect.
And the only way you can get there is through working on yourself to bridge that. So that's the thing that gets people. I mean, how realistic is it to work on oneself? I mean, because conscious or subconscious sabotage. I'm in the thick of that myself. I mean, I look at some stuff and I go, I am knocking that out of the ballpark. And then I'm like, my God, I put on 20 kilos, like.
Yeah, I never said it was easy.
What are we doing on this podcast again?
I mean, as individuals, we're like humans are complex. We have multiple layers. And, it's only really in the last 10, 15 years that they've understood a lot more about how the mind works, how the nervous system works, and how we as a human works. It's only really with neuroscience that they've been able to scientifically prove a lot of wisdom that ancient civilizations knew about but couldn't necessarily prove.
Yeah.
But we are really complex, and that's why, it's not going to be oh, yes, I spent a couple of weeks and tick, 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 I'm done forever. Like it just doesn't work like that. If you want to keep growing, you've got to keep investing and learning. And so what uncomfortable growth is also about is how do you have the tools to continue that cycle? So, what are the ways that we can learn how to do that? So whether, you're a 30-year-old or a 60-year-old, whether you're focused on work or you're focused on finding what is your next chapter, it needs to be applicable to all those different contexts. So it's a foundational approach or process that you can apply to yourself at any point in time.
You're triggering a couple of thoughts, but I might anchor them in something that I've got from one of your. What I love about this book is that you gave it to my partner and I picked it up first. So, and I've been taking. It's really going to annoy her. I've been taking pictures of things that I go, aha, Rowena said. No, I haven't been doing that, I promise. It's the XY axis with the stretch zones. Can you remember what figure that was off the top of your head?
Oh, the uncomfortable growth zones?
Yeah, where was that page? Both of us go into our book.
I know. I've got one right here. There it is. Page 37.
Oh, great. Thank you. I must have scanned past that.
Is that the one you were looking for?
Yeah, exactly. This one here.
Yeah.
I'll put that there in case someone's watching us. Yeah.
Yeah.
And this one made me think, and it's back to that anchor point. It makes me think of areas where I'm anxious or I'm in an uncomfortable growth zone. I don't think there's anything in my life that's currently safe necessarily. It's really interesting. So I find, and this is the thought experiment that came out for me on this. I find that I can be in states of, controllable anxiety because I already say no to a lot that I know that's going to push me over the edge because I'm on the edge with so much.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm not doing that. You guys do that. I'll do this. And it's really mindful because as the CEO, people expect me to do it no matter what it is. Yes. They're like, what do you mean no? And I'm like, well, no, I don't want to do that. That is going to break me. Yep. But you go for your life, So I have that. But this thing that, that made me think this. So I can be in flow in some areas, not in flow in other areas. I'm processing all of that. But then this thing that you just said made me rethink the thought from this morning, which is this. I'm not sure you can do it alone. And, you can work on yourself as much as, or I can work on myself as much as I want. But the moment someone that I depend on in my life starts behaving a certain way, it can sabotage everything. Everything that I have, I'm in a high growth zone at the moment. I am on, believe me, the edge. And it's making me think of the loneliness of leadership and then where you look for comfort. And in honesty, I've had to find that in firstly listening to a lot of podcasts and then reading a lot of books. And not that I say I'm like one of these, I'm not like any of those people, but I at least find comfort in the thought. And also I can search out the wisdom that makes me think, I'm not actually alone doing those things. Oh, I am running of a pack. And I heard this thing on Modern Wisdom recently, and it's they say you're the average of the 5 people you hang around with. He said you're the average of the 5 podcasts that you listen to. And so you've thought about, the understanding of ancient stuff on an individual level. I feel that's at group level too. And I said this to you this morning. That's why I'm so desperate for tribe or pack. That is the word. Yeah. I'm desperate for pack, but it's bloody hard to find. So do you have any views on that you can't do uncomfortable growth alone? And have you gone, what does it look like as a pack? I mean, is that...
Yeah, well, let me, it's a really interesting concept because I run the training. I just finished one, so it's a 6-week program, and I love running it as a group because I think there's so much, which is what you're describing, in terms of collective wisdom, but also you don't feel alone. And it's much easier, it feels much easier to go through and think about these big things when you're not going, am I wasting my time? Am I going crazy? I just be like, just shut up and just get on with what you're doing. So there's, I love the group community idea. But coming also to your point around, can you do uncomfortable growth on your own? I think you can, but you get so much more support, motivation, and insight when you do it with others. And I think it also depends on where you're at. Sometimes you just want to hear how other people are thinking about it, or you want to get ideas from other people. So I've been speaking to a lot of people at retirement age. And and so it's something that, a lot of people are going through at the same time, at the cusp of retirement. And so for them, they've got these huge questions about, well, what will I be? What will my identity be? What will I do? I can't play golf 24/7. And so there's a huge shift happening in identity and choice, and even, with their partners. What does that look like? Because that dynamic is often really significantly changed as well. But they're interested in doing it with others because they know that others are navigating it. So there's this, I know I'm not alone. And it's smart to be able to talk with other people because there's more ideas or more insights or, more people who've tried something that I thought was a good idea, and maybe there are some downfalls, pros and cons that I need to be aware of. So I think there's a piece around, what are you trying to achieve with yourself? Is it something that you want to do or would like to do with the group? Or is it something that's very personal, that's more something that you need to spend time on with you? And I think that can change depending on what you're doing. I know when, I've done a lot of work in the last 8 years, and in my head I call it shifting from purpose to calling. And that's a big difference, right? So there's all this stuff out there around purpose. But for me, purpose is about, okay, where do I want to go? But it requires effort to get there. Calling is similar, but it's letting yourself be pulled into what you were meant to be. And so it's similar but different. And it's taken me some time to articulate that difference. But now I'm very clear around, this is the path. I don't know the exact ending. There is no end to it necessarily, but I know it's along this path. And so that's something that for me is very personal, and required more introspection.
Do you think you've answered that? Are you arriving at your calling versus your purpose now? Is that where you are? Is that what is that a personal introspection for you?
Yeah. So the shift that I've been playing with is from driving with effort to letting things unfold with ease. So we talk.
Just say that. Just say those exact words again. I'm just typing some notes here. So, driving with effort
Versus unfolding with ease.
That is beautiful.
That may end up in wonderosity. So,
I might have to get a quote disclaimer from you at the end of this. I'll tell you about some of the techniques that we use, and just so you know, I promise we'll come back to exactly that. We transcribe everything. We use artificial intelligence to extract the key insights, and then we turn those insights into marketing campaigns, which is why you see the volume of content from my company that you see, because we're a content-led company. I mean, we're a firm of creatives. Look at my hair, for God's sake, look how long it is. I might have to ask you about what we can and can't publish, because that's driving with effort versus unfolding with ease. Because, and it touches on something. It's when I told you that I'm in a really tense time in the business, and the best advice from the most driven people I know, really exceptional, is just been let it unfold. Really, it's really fascinating as a concept.
I think it's something that you have to learn, because again, it's particularly when we're in stressful situations like you are with your business, that usually drives into our small self or fear, and it's I need to take back control, right? So I need to do this, and I need to get this in place, but it's all driven by control. And control is usually a reaction to fear. Whereas when we're in our best self, we are much more open and able to just be at ease and to just see where things go. And I think, your friends giving you the advice are trying to say, don't act too soon from a place of fear. Just see if you can pull back and breathe and put your intention out into the universe and just give it some space. What comes. And it's a really hard thing to do. This is something that I'm only really getting my head around now. 51 years in.
Do you ever feel like we're slow learners as humans?
I feel like I am sometimes.
There's a couple of things in that about driving with effort versus unfolding with ease. Actually, it links back to, another thought that I was having. I'm going to ill articulate this, but I'll do my best. It makes me think about the reason that people maybe flow back to the church in later life, and I know this is tangential, but they flow back to the church, is because it's an institution of spirit and not an institution of, and please don't think me naive, of commerce. I know there's control and there's all those other things. I'm not a person of the church, but I am a person of faith. I see many groups around that are, innovation or commerce this or commerce that, but there's and there's nothing wrong with capitalism at all, but it's the driving motive behind the thing, not the evolution of the individual. And it's very hard to find groups that strike that very clear balance between, there's more to humans than you can see. There's more to you than you. There's the group that you're in. And it's okay to be that and be successful at the same time. Because, as I say, and some of the words you chose there make me, just rereading my notes, make me think of that, and why people look for those things later in life, with the wisdom, like you say, your you're 51 and you're finding that for yourself, you know. And perhaps if you don't find it, you'll go and rejoin the church if you're not already in the church. I don't know. You might be.
Yeah.
You actually make me think, and I always say this wrong, so feel free to laugh away. Dharma, the Indian version of, you know, your calling, which is, and then Kage, the Japanese version of it. I've got to look it up 2 seconds because I can't have it on market. Ikigai. Yeah, you know what you're good at, what the world needs. You know, and whatever the third thing is, it's the middle of that, and that feels like calling to me. But I haven't heard it articulated in the way that you've done it, and it's a really nice concept.
Yeah, I think you know, there is a lot of stuff out there around purpose, right? And I think particularly post-COVID, or like I think what COVID did is it just made everyone stop and think and go, what am I doing this for? Like, what do I actually want? You know, I could have tomorrow. And, you know, and so that's led to a lot of people, I think, kind of asking some bigger questions. And that's why there's so much out there, you know, even in the corporate world, what's your corporate purpose? Or, you know, there's a lot of talk about Gen Z are very purpose driven, and, you know, there's all this stuff out there. And I think that's really valid. But I've also had conversations with a lot of people, and they're like, I don't know what my purpose is. Like, I feel like I should have one. Like, I feel like I need one because everyone's talking about it. I don't know what my purpose is. Like, or can I have a purpose which is just to be a good wife, mother, you know, person? You know, is that okay? Right? So I feel like there's a lot of pressure around purpose, and I've just been exploring a lot around energy, and you think pressure and you think force and you think driving, and that's something that I've been really good at in my career, right? Like, to drive your career, you have to have, you know, a commitment, a level of drive if that's what you want to do. But it's only now I'm like, okay, well, I've seen what that is. I know what that is. But is there something beyond? And that's where, you know, sometimes you get to a point and, you know, you get to the top of the mountain, you're like, actually, there's another side down. And for me, calling is, you know, finding that piece, that thing which you were born to do. It's in you. It's not something that you've had to learn. It's the skills of maturity, but uncovering what's actually your essence and what's inside you, and it's bringing those things together, and that to me is how you find your calling.
Yeah. We could spend days on establishing calling. You know, I said an hour won't be enough for you and I.
I know.
I really listen. Again, I picked up on a podcast today, which I really enjoyed. And maybe it's a bit simple, but I enjoyed the concept. And I think it might have been Jimmy Carr or something. And it was and he was quoting somebody else. It wasn't even him. And he said, everything that I've done in life, good, bad, or whatever, has led to me being the father that I want to be as a calling. And for whatever reason, that really got me, because, you know, I've had some, you know, you don't know me that well, but I've had some adventures over the years. You know, it's not, you know, a roller coaster, you called it in your book. But and that's not meant as a lament, because whilst it's been uncomfortable, there's been a shit ton of growth. Sorry, any children are listening, including my own. And it means that I deal with things in a certain way, but it's not that fancy to have a calling to be a good dad, you know, like that, if that's the thing. So that's where I got to. And then the universe by accident made me pick up the book, What We Owe the Future, which is the concept of long-termism and making sure that, you know, there is a future for our offspring. And so there's nothing that complicated about being a good parent. Well, it's a good calling, but the business leads to that, because I'm in business to show the way. And then having long-termism about, intergenerational survivability of the species, which is a little bit far-ranging, I know, but it really sings to me, and it's not that hard. And I guess I share it because, it's a pretty simple thing, and I feel like callings and purposes, having been in businesses that use that language. I mean, from same as you, I'm a corporate person. I'm still in corporate. They're my customers, so I love the work with them. But everyone seems to be saying it, but it always seems to be overcomplicated, and I'm not sure it is that complicated.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Agree with you. I think we get caught up in comparisonitis. So our world
is that book number 4 that you're going to do?
You can maybe. I get too many ideas for books. I need to get better at churning them out. So yeah, I do think, we've got so many cues which are reinforcing comparisonitis. Like even more so with digital technology, because there's more imagery from advertising, social media, there's so much comparisonitis in that. And like I think back to when I was younger, and it's like, well, this is kind of the path that the world's saying you should take, right? Go to university, get a good job, and I enjoyed that. Like, it's not like that was a horrible experience for me. I had great experiences. I got to go overseas and live overseas, all really good. But I think with time, you get to an age and you're like, okay, so I understand what it is. I understand the reality, not just the perception, like in those jobs, late nights, traveling a lot, time away from family. It's not all as beautiful as it looks. So it's the reality of it. But I think it's also then you get to a point and you're like, well, but what do I want? What do I really want? And that's a really hard question to answer.
Is it though?
Well, I think it is with conviction. So it's the conviction part that's hard, because I think we ping pong around to lots of different things. Oh, maybe I want this or that or this or that. But actually what you want really, when you pare it back, is, I think, to be a good person, to know that you've made a difference, and to have lived a life of value. So it's not the stuff and the comparisonitis stuff. It's the simple stuff, but getting to that point of conviction where someone can say, like, my calling was to be a great father. The world of comparisonitis is actually a journey. So I think that's the tension point.
Yeah. I'm not saying it is easy because I think it's easy. I'm just saying because I wonder if it is. But yeah, I do think you said something earlier on, and it's in your book as well. It's what values are real to you. You said there was a word you used before about with conviction. Values of conviction as opposed to values of show, what you think you should write, which is corporate values a lot all over. But I also think our personal values, what we should write. For anybody who's made it this far and listening to me waffle on about my crap, when I did redid your thing, I revisited my values that I'd written down, and I went, God, that sounds so naive. Would I really show the world, the value, about what my purpose or my calling, but also the values that are actually important to me. And if anyone does, pick up your book and read it, I think by the end of it, they'll be looking at themselves through a different lens, because there was a couple of things in there. There was the values that I'd had, and then I remember that I'd committed, and I haven't done it, so I will, was go back and do my timeline about events and consequence, and then following on events. Because I think there's some really, when I reread that, I'm not trying to speak in tongues to confuse people here. When I reread my values with the context of timeline, I was like, it's really interesting at the age of 47 that that's the way I lead business, because it's completely back to, events in life. So I found that quite fascinating.
We're shaped along the way and we don't often realize it.
Yeah, my number one value is to do the right thing. As a repulsion to feeling like I've not had the right thing done. It's like, do it anyway, even if you feel aggrieved, which is really even that's a day's conversation on ego.
And courage, I think, and also courage, like to know that if it's that important to you, like it's something that you will take the hard road to protect because it's that important to you.
It is. It really is. And there's another flow on thought from that. But I better get back to a question about you. Having written the book and lived the post-book experience, what's been the biggest impact for you personally, and your family?
That's a great question. For me, I think, I was nervous putting out the book because it's quite personal as well.
It is.
And it's so interesting. Like when I first started to write it, I was still writing more in the third person, like you would a corporate book. And I was struggling with it. And I was like, why am I struggling with this? I don't know why. And then I think I got to about 5,000 words, not that far. And I'm like, no, this isn't right. Something's wrong. And it's because I wasn't writing in the first person. And so then I stepped back and I wrote it from a personal point of view, and it flowed, like it just came out. And so for me, the book, a lot of it was building my own courage to put myself out there, and get comfortable with that. And I have to say, like, I'm really comfortable with that now, but I wasn't just a few years ago. So, it's a spectrum. Like that's shifted me hugely. And I think that impacts how I connect with people. And I think it's also helped to embed the learning myself. So there's that old saying around, we teach what we need to learn. So true. So understanding something and being able to articulate it doesn't mean you can't deepen the knowledge or the wisdom. And so I ran the program just a couple of weeks ago, and I actually updated the content. So it's it's written as a training module rather than a book. So it's same but different. And I updated the content to make it much more experiential, because what I've been playing with and learning is how to use my whole person intelligence, head, heart, gut, which is why I'm able to talk to you about, let it unfold with ease, and so I then updated the content with more around that. So I think my learning's deepening, and I'm much more comfortable putting my personal self out there. And I think for my family, I don't know, like I think I know my husband is inspired. He wants to write a book.
Nice. What's he going to be on?
Nothing similar, nothing like mine. He's still playing with it. But I think, there's a sense of, wow, anyone can write a book. But you have to, again, do the work. So, and when you your name on something, you want to personally be proud of it.
Yeah. I think anybody I've ever spoken to that's written a book, even if it's fantasy or a diary or a history book, or in this case, it's yours is part diary, part help, part practical steps. I mean, there's a few themes categories I put you in. Your soul is always on the page, even if it's a complete work of fantasy, the soul is on the page. Be interesting to see what your husband writes about.
Yeah.
Are we at an age of genuine enlightenment where people want to bring whole person intelligence to the workplace, or are we just values washing so we can make more money and get more attention?
I think the younger generation, no, actually, I think most people want to bring whole person intelligence to the workplace, but there's a spectrum of where people are at and their ability to do that. So, I was speaking to someone I know who's Aboriginal, and he was saying, he works in corporate as well, and he was saying that the thing he finds really interesting about Western society is how we invest so much in our brain, but it's information. It's not spiritual wisdom. And he's not talking about church spiritual. He's talking about knowing your heart, knowing your gut as well as your head. And he said, that's such a integrated part of learning in Aboriginal culture. And so I think there is an awakening happening. I think there's a big spectrum still, but I think COVID has been a catalyst, not just for digital and video, but also for thinking more holistically about life. I mean, it's collapsed work and life, but it's also, I think, made people think, what's important. And I think it's like people feel safe to say yes. I maybe can't articulate it as clearly, but my gut says this and I trust my gut. So I've been having a lot of those conversations in the corporate workplace. And people will be like, oh, this is so great. Like now I kind of understand the science a bit more as to why I've always done that. And now there's more permission to bring it into the corporate workplace.
I mean, for what it's worth, I believe there is a more general awakening. I mean, I'm probably channeling Eckhart Tolle and a new, I think it's a New Earth, or maybe it's a New Earth, where he talks about, blossoming of awakening, and it's gaining momentum. So I think, I see that. And I've been doing what we're doing here for 20 years, but just not in digital forum. I mean, it's what I love to do, talk about callings. And it's surprising, the people that flow to me now are my customers who become my friends, who, we serve each other in a few ways. They tend to be of this style, I think. But what I observe is still a group that won't move. With people that I care about, and I see them not moving. And in fact, I suspect, and these people have important jobs, many of them. I suspect they would even listen to this with a bit of scorn. So I just, but they'll be there at the corporate thing doing the rah-rah with everybody else. Don't get me wrong, maybe even front row. So I just, I have to strike that balance between my skepticism and optimism.
I think, uncomfortable growth it's not just corporate, right? An acceptable corporate, right? Like it's much more personal. And, like so many of the people I know in corporate who I would have thought this is not their kettle of fish, this is not their thing, have actually reached out to me and, said, wow, like that really resonated with me. So I think there's an element of just being human. It's just being taught for so long that this is the behavior that means you're a good professional. We ignored a lot of ourselves, right? And it's only now that it's starting to, kind of share that there's other ways. Like a really good example is tears, right? So, you know, like as a female, you know, I have a cry every so often. You know, things become hard, whatever. And it's not a bad thing. I actually see it as a good thing. I've always done it. You know, just when things get a lot and I feel much better. But I've never cried in the workplace. Not because I want to, but because I was told at a really young age that, that will just make you basically be seen as, you know, a silly girl kind of thing, too emotional. There was real perception and underwritten rule that, you know, women are far too emotional and so they don't make good leaders. Now that started to shift, right, where EQ has risen, but that was always pushed down as a skill. So I think there's what do they say? What do they call it? Rewriting the ship. And more.
We can run with that. Let's say that, yes.
Yes, more recognition that we are whole people, and ignoring parts of ourselves is not helpful.
Yeah, that really resonates. It really resonates because if we were in work together and you started crying, I wouldn't judge you for crying. I'd be like, well, as long as I get to have a turn too.
Yeah.
You know, and as a I don't know what you call it when someone has an emotion and you feel their emotion. It's probably an empath. I'm that way.
Yeah.
But I also know that if I cried in work, I'd probably be judged even more harshly than the woman next to me, even if I felt like it. You know. And so, you know, it's some of these things cross gender boundaries and and it's a fascinating world. Like I really love this particular space.
Yeah.
It really resonates quite a lot. And I'm just mindful of we've just got to 3 o'clock. And I told you we could do another year on this. I can't remember if I've asked this here because I've got I've got several pages of notes on here. But is there a thing that's surprised you the most of all things in your discoveries of, you know, your not looking for, because that's not what I see in you, arriving at calling, not looking for calling, you've arrived at it. Is there a thing that's surprising you most in this?
That a lot of like getting to my calling is stuff that was there all along. Like you said, like you've been an interviewer. So I'll tell you this one last story, but when I was at university, I accidentally fell into a love letter writing business. So I had a friend who was in love with this girl, and he was so tongue-tied around her, and it was just painful to watch. And I just said, look, let me help you out. Let me write a really nice letter saying how you feel, and you can give her the letter and at least take an action. And so he did that, and she loved the letter, and they ended up going on a date, and he ended up getting less awkward, and they ended up dating for a while. It was really cute. But he then went and told a lot of other people, or word got around, and then suddenly I had all these people coming to me asking if I can help them write, you know, lovely love letters. And I was like, I can't help everyone. And they, no, we'll pay you. And so I literally ended up with this love letter writing business. I'd be on the university lawn on Tuesdays and Thursdays. I developed a brief template. I had kind of guidelines. They had to tell me how they were feeling, and then I would put it into words, and they'd be able to take it from there. So that whole piece around writing, even when I was talking about wondrosity, I've always loved writing poetry, even when I was really little. And so I think when you look back, when you start to feel the calling, it's been there all along. We just didn't see it. Or maybe we got sidetracked. And there's nothing wrong with a good sidetrack, right? Like I love a little sidetrack, or we just went down a different path. But when we search for our calling, I think it brings us back to the best part of us. And a lot of it are, you know, what makes us us, It's our unique gifts, our combination of unique talents and experiences, and the ability then to do something with it.
Yeah, there's a great deal of environmental and societal intervention which can derail people short term or for life or till it's too late. And I know many people who have the, let's say they run a very large business of some sort, and they were like, I wish I was an artist, or I do this and I wish I was a fashion designer, or or that's the thing that I always wanted, but it wasn't seen as a career choice for them, and so their environment, parents, friends, whatever, shaped them. And then what do you call it? Comparisonitis? Maybe parental comparisonitis sent them on the wrong path.
Absolutely. Everyone wanted their kid to be a doctor and a lawyer. But I think it's also, we're lucky now that for many people, or particularly coming from the corporate world, you may get to an age, 50, say, and I'm just over 50, where you're like, okay, well, financially, I'm okay. So, I can think about, exploring what I really want to do in my next chapter. And the estimate is, we're probably going to live somewhere between 90 to 100, right? You're really only halfway in.
Yeah.
And then to be able to do that, knowing that you've got a bit of space to explore is scary, but it's also an incredible gift.
Yeah, it's really very cool, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's funny. You said you asked the question about what the context of what might I want, and one of my wants is not to die. Like I want to stick around. I want to see how this plays out. I think there's just so, there is real there's pervasive doom, in the world for a few things at the moment. People are always looking for the next potential doomsday, and we have the advent of AI or AGI, depending on what it says. But I'm with you. So much can happen in the next 50 years. Like it's going to be a pretty exciting time. But that's the one of these. It's again one of your themes to the book, and a nice anchor maybe. Yeah, nice anchor to the end is that is not to live in fear, but to embrace it and navigate it. And I guess that's the point, whether it's 10 or 50 years, right? Now, Rowena, I've really loved this. I'm so glad after about 400 goes we got to have this conversation. And I'm very grateful for your time, and I can't wait to read Wonderosity. I can't wait to come on one of your retreats and meet a new pack, or maybe send my whole family. I don't need any help. It's just them. They're the crazies, not me. But yeah, I'm very grateful for your time. So thank you.
It's just been brilliant. I've loved it, and it's just been a beautiful hour. So thank you.
You're welcome.